been very suspicious of non-Texans coming to testify at our committee. There have been a lot of them recently.
Sure.
Despite what your form said, you're not from Texas.
No, sir.
Why are you here testifying in front of us on this issue?
I might as well answer the question by asking why have I been in a lot of other states talking about this issue. About 6 years ago, I and others sort of who had been looking at this stuff thought we were kind of done talking about vouchers. The results that I've mentioned over the last decade were so bad that for those of us who sort of committed ourselves to what was called evidence-based education policy, like we're going to try to follow the data, we had all sort of just kind of decided, I guess we're moving on from vouchers. Clearly they don't work by any standard we've ever seen in the expert community. These things don't work. Let's go find other ways to improve education for kids and families. And that's not what happened. Right? So I can tell you the exact day, not the exact day, but it was March of 2022, so 3 years ago, that I really started to get active in this space as an expert talking about it. And I got a call from NBC News asking me to comment on a bill that was floating around very similar to this one in another state. And I hadn't been following the news a lot. We're coming out of COVID. I was dealing with some medical stuff, and it was just like, what are we talking about? Like, didn't this end? The results were so bad. Why are we still having this conversation? And it turns out that horrific learning loss wasn't enough to stop these bills. And I had dedicated the last 20 years of my career to the idea that data and evidence should inform education policy, particularly toward the question of what's best for kids and families. And how do we make education better for kids and families, particularly those who've been perhaps ill-served by the public education system? How do we make it better? Everything I've been working on over the last 20 years on this issue would tell me that these bills are really bad, and yet here they are. And so that was enough to kind of get me talking about this and using what I knew to try to kind of explain what I knew. And I also think, just as an aside, as I said, I started this, I started fairly agnostic about the structure of aid to these kids and families, and that included 20 years ago vouchers. And so I do think, I've been part of a lot of studies that 20 years ago showed some decent stuff, and the data changed. And if I was talking about it 20 years ago or 15 years ago saying these results were okay for kids, I feel like I owed it both to myself and to the kids and families we were talking about to say otherwise when the results changed, and that's what I'm doing.